we're just here to talk about CCS and stuff in relation to the jungle role, because obviously it's a very important role in the amateur scene. If you guys don't know me, my name is Mossiee. You guys have probably seen me in the Discord, shit posting or whatever it may be, or you've seen me like losing with Goldfish Gaming, coin flipping games. I am the captain and the jungler and whatever else. The CEO and the founder for Goldfish Gaming. Obviously, I do content occasionally, and that's kind of where I'm coming from here. I just I want to make more stuff for the league. I just put out that stupid power rankings article for the Thursday group. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, just check out the community content tab in the Discord. As for my team, Goldfish Gaming, we're back out in full force this split. We had a super sad ending to last season where we couldn't quite push to playoffs. So this season, it's all about like rebirth and beginning like a new like golden age of the Goldfish Gaming dynasty. It's like very like Chinese influence. But I'm here because I've been trying to learn from other people in the league, because I think not enough people do that. So I don't know if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Llama, obviously, I think most of the community knows you a little bit from the lock-in tournament, but go ahead.
Yeah. So hey, I'm known in game as BBB Llama. I'm the starting jungler for Hard Hat Zone. Currently power ranked first there for both of our teams. Going in for that. This is my cat Ari actually coming in to come hang out as well. I'm the Hard Hat Zone starting jungler. Been playing the game for about 10 years or so in a couple different leagues, and then also just playing for fun with friends. So I'm really excited to kind of get a chance. I'm all about following competitive from kind of the top down. So LCS amateur, kind of really follow a lot of Champions Queue stuff right now. Looking forward to getting a chance to kind of talk jungle, talk macro, and get a chance to learn more about the game with y'all.
Totally. And then here we have Taysak, and if you guys don't know, I believe Taysak, you're the coach for Zeal Blue or Zeal White. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a team of coaches, and those coaches are interchangeable with each of the programs. But touching on me specifically, I'm a former D1 jungler. I've played comp for a while. My league career started back in like 2017, I want to say. I was a LAN player, went to a few LANs, flew around, went into coaching. I was a part of Loki Gaming, if anyone remembers that. They took a game off Ep1, our Vietnam team, in 2019 Worlds. So, pog to that.
Very cool. Yeah, that's credits right there.
Yeah. Left league, went in Counter-Strike development, and I've just been doing player development and esports growth in both games for about 4 years now.
I've been playing comp esports for like a long time, and I just wanted to like come to league. And obviously like the jungle is such an interesting role from the perspective of a Dota player, because if you guys didn't know, Dota, obviously, like I think the one thing league players know about Dota is that like the roles are not as set, and there's a lot of fluctuation. So there used to be this role called position 4, and I mean there still is, but it's like kind of a second support. Kind of think of like the roaming top meta, where you have like Smite and you just run around and you do shit on the map. And like I had my most fun with Dota when I was doing that. So I came to League and I was like, I can just come to League and shot call and run around the map and kill dudes, and like this is fun, So that's basically like why I became a jungler. And now, I'm at this point where I'm trying to get into the deeper learning aspect, and I'm trying to talk with you guys and learn as much as I can, because I just want to soak up information, and you guys have all been playing the game for way longer than I have. So that's kind of why I reached out to you two. But I think right now in particular the jungle meta is so interesting to talk about in the CCS. I'm of the opinion that a lot of teams in general make a lot of mistakes drafting, which obviously they do. But we can start to see sort of a meta emerging, where teams are taking stuff that they see in pro play more or less. And obviously like the pro leagues have been going for a couple weeks here. So just to start with the meta, obviously I think we've seen a lot of like Jarvan and Xin, the stuff that is super, super common in pro play. Do we think there are any champions that are being severely underrated right now in the CCS? Like, do you guys have champs? I know Taysak, I looked at your OPGG, you're playing a lot of Gragas. I played a bunch of Gragas myself recently, actually, like just the other day. Are there any champs that stand out to you, Taysak, that are being kind of overlooked right now? Whether it be because they're a little bit harder to, like they're difficult to pull off, or are they just like being underrated?
There are definitely champs that stick out to me. Gragas sucks, by the way. Do not pick him. You're welcome. No, Diana is pretty good. I think we're all cognizant of her power level, full AP.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I don't make sure none of the Zeal staff hear me because I'm at the Zeal house right now. KS is in the next hall over, so say hi to him. Tank Diana is low key bonkers, dude. I'm
The
telling
chem
you.
tank? I think I've seen it.
Or Sunfire.
Sunfire now since the nerf, Sunfire into demonic, and then you flex into like AP bruiser items.
That sounds gross.
It's low key bonkers. You go overheal, so you get the double shield proc on your W because you get a shield on the initial W, and then when your 3 balls pop, you get another W, which is also going to reproc shield bash. So you're
That's
getting an
crazy.
additional like 90 damage that also scales with your level.
Mhm.
And a lot of Diana's damage is like in her auto attacks and her passive,
And her third auto,
which does only have a 40% AP scaling. The rest of it is level based. So you are doing a lot of damage.
Right, like either way. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I think that pick is low key poggers. Definitely.
Very exciting. One thing I wanted to ask about with Diana specifically is I feel like last season she was a no-brainer. She was just super, super strong. She was one of those champions that they seemingly randomly decided to just be like, we're going to give this champ a crazy clear. You know, what really changed with Diana? Because I feel like right now in pro play, as opposed to seeing her just taken like immediately, you're seeing Diana being run with like Yasuo. Like I know she took a couple nerfs, right? But do you think that she's a champion that you can kind of just pick on her own, or do you think that you more or less just always want to run her with Yasuo?
So the problem with Diana is she's a one mode champion. That's what we call it over here at Zeal. She was already good. Her clear speed is on the middle end of full clear champions, but she did get a buff on her passive damage to monsters, which brought
Yeah,
her
I saw that.
Yeah, that brought her to the limelight when you saw her her pick rate skyrocket. But she's what we call a one mode champion. She wants to go in. She wants to make that big play. She wants that to happen. So it is obviously beneficial to pick her with Yasuo. You're looking in the pro games like the LCS. She's only getting picked with Yasuo just because the margin of error is really slim and that level of play.
Yeah. That makes sense. So she's just easier to pull off, basically.
Yeah. Compared to something in the CCS where you can pick Yasuo, Diana, whatever you want, because our players are not as good playing around that, I would say. In a solo queue environment, I think the champion is phenomenal in every aspect of the game. In a comp, you want her with a pairing, I would say. Think about elite pairings. Similar in that vein.
When you have the single target lockdown, yeah, especially. And we actually played Diana. We picked the Diana Yasuo as you're talking about, Taysak, as well. Hard Hat Zone played it. I think it was game 1 we played it. We locked it 2-3 on red side, which was like, or would have been blue side then, yeah, because after our 1 pick. So it was one of those combos that like we just felt so comfortable on. It gives us that linear engage, you know, like you're saying, like she wants to go in, but when you have the immediate follow-up with Diana, it's one of those champs that can always initiate that, you know, like Diana's always going to be able to flash heal to carry, you know, from like 2,500 range. Like her range is insane. And
yeah, it's target access.
And it's the immediate lockdown, you know, even if you're going right into Zonia's 3 or that kind of itemization, like a champ like Diana, you know, I mean, especially now that they reverted, right? She skyrocketed in pick rate and then they brought her down back to 250% on that passive to minions and then back to 300. And so like, you know, I think as Taysak is saying, like it's fallen off a little bit. And I think the demonic along with that tank build, like we're seeing with a Kali Chem tank as well, is like, that's starting to become like, you know, if you can be a frontline initiation and not die as well, you don't need 100-0 someone because there's enough damage from your team, you know? But yeah, it's definitely something as you're saying in CCS that like, yeah, all right, hey, here's what we're going to do and good luck trying to counter it. It's like, you know, like there's not enough of a kind of a counter style to kind of really mitigate that, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting conversation to be here, or to be had here about champions and, you know, like adopting certain champions, because I think that is the major level or the major problem at this level of play. For example, I brought up Diana because this is something my mid laner and I have been talking about a lot. He doesn't play Yasuo. We have like 50 champs on his sheet. He does not play Yasuo. And it seems like there are certain teams that don't really care. They're just going to try whatever's good. But like when you're a player in this level of, you know, like amateur, it can be a little bit tricky because there are all these strategies that you see that you want to try. And obviously it takes time. You have to invest time in the champions to truly understand and to gain a level of comfortability, just so that you can make them work. But I guess my question is, as a player, Llama, how do you really balance that? Obviously, you've been playing the game for a long time, and you probably have a really good grasp on some of the jungle champs. But surely there's stuff that comes out of the meta. Do you think that solo queue is like an effective practice tool, or do you just try to run stuff in scrims a lot? And what is your policy on that? Like, do you play maybe just a few games of scrims, and if it works, then you're good to go, or do you just kind of keep trying to practice the new champs?
Yeah, I definitely find if I'm pulling out a new champ, I'm not pulling out in solo queue. If I'm like, all right, I want to try this for CCS, I want to try this for competitive. Solo queue is a terrible environment. As an example, I was picking Gwen because I thought that it's been really strong, and maybe we'll talk about it because it's just meta right now. It has flex top potential. Seeing Blabber pull it out, it feels like it kind of can go toe to toe with the J4 to the Xin, those kind of things you're talking about. But it's such a scaling champ that in solo queue, was playing into a Kha'Zix. I went like 1 in 15. You can find that on my OPGG. Like I just got absolutely destroyed because Kha'Zix can sit in my jungle. My mid top isn't going to try to get prio and roam. Gwyn at level 4 is doing nothing compared to a Kha'Zix with ISO damage. And it's like those kind of environments where like you can't just like pick a champ in solo queue, say, all right, unless I'm trying to learn the mechanics. There's no point in it, So I don't think solo queue is a good environment for trying out stuff for competitive. I think scrims is a much better, more controlled environment to at least like be in comms at least, if nothing else. But I think at the same time with the jungle pool, like you're seeing these answers starting to come out, whether it's at the top level in competitive or all the way down, where it's like, I don't think even at this level, there's not like you have to pick J4 Xin or you're trolling. Like you can honestly pull out probably 30 of the 40 jungle champions and like be okay, like if you're a pocket Shaco one trick, you can make it work in plat, and I think teams will respect it. If you have 1,000 Shaco games, they're going to ban Shaco. Like, you're not going to be giving this guy Shaco because it's not a top tier pick. So, I think there's that piece of it too, especially at this level. And I'd be curious from the coaching perspective too, do you let your players play their one tricks, or are you saying, no, hey buddy, you really got to learn Zen, like whatever that is.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about. To touch on the Xin and Jarvan topic, I think these champions are going to fall off. I think a lot of their strength was tied to their floor usefulness. There's few champions that beat Xin. That stays true. There's few champions like that get as much value as Jarvan from so few abilities and so few raw stats. That's true, but the items that made them appear pushed them up higher, like Sterex and Gore Drinker, and how those items synergize and provided value with Conqueror are gone. So I think that leaves a lot of room. That's where we're seeing the Gwens, the Dianas, the Hecarim, stuff like that come in. To talk about your solo queue point, it depends what your goals are. For us at Zeo, we're focused purely on individual development. I think individual development is way more beneficial to player growth here. We were talking about in Trash Talk, like previous competitive experience and intangibles. I think intangibles only add 1 to 5% on like player value. If I make my player go up 3 tiers, I think that is infinitely more valuable. Solo queue, it's in the name solo. I'm just making a point, I'm not pointing fun at you. But I think solo queue is purely for individual concepts. Like I can't practice playing for my top lane in solo queue because there are variables that are outside of my control. Solo queue, you can work on playing a matchup you're bad at. So for the example you've got, just to shine some light on it, we can figure out where Kha'Zix is starting, play opposite jungle, and then play a quad where he isn't. Like avoidance is a big thing in losing jungle. But I do agree, competitive and scrim environments are a more controlled environment. You just learn at a much slower pace because, say, we're working on bot lane concepts. My top laner has to play weak side, and the game is not fun for him. So we at Zeo try to focus mostly on solo queue and individualistic stuff.
I did want to touch on one thing you talked about, with practicing solo queue, because I think obviously some of the strong junglers, like there was that stupid tier list that came out the other day about like A tier, S tier, whatever, where quite frankly, I wrote an essay to Swagner and like I didn't expect him to read it, but then it seemed like he just went by Elo for the players. And I don't necessarily think that being like, let's say plat 1 as opposed to plat 4 makes you a better player. Obviously, like you said, there are intangibles, and working in a team environment and like comp is a very different game from solo queue, like you said. Gregorio, for example, is a player who right now I think is gold 1 in solo queue, but he's widely regarded as one of the best junglers in the league, thanks in no small part to his performance last split with Lost Chapter. I think it's a really interesting case because usually the perspective that people have in this league is, okay, this guy's high elo jungler, he's Diamond 4 or whatever it is, like that guy's a good jungler, right? So I guess my question, just to circle back, is what makes a strong jungler in comp? What do you think are some of the qualities that matter the most? Obviously, communication is going to be up there, but is there any, do you think there are any like overlooked aspects of, how to become a stronger jungle player in comp, like a more well-rounded player, I guess?
I don't think there's so much difference between like a good jungle player and a good player. I categorize like that in the same way. I think the guy that you mentioned is fine. I watched his solo queue games. He has a good flow state, which is just he clears stuff and then stuff happens around him and he plays it. This is, to be completely fair, this is something that I'm working on with my players. Like I had a jungle session today and we worked on that. I am seeing no single improvement, but it's something that he has. Maybe I can attribute that to his previous competitive experience. Maybe I can't. But he's still making a lot of mistakes. Like
right, just like really any other jungler. Yeah,
really frequent. That's as far as I'll touch on him. I think all I will say is I think he will benefit greatly from a jungle session with me.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too, it was funny because and Taysak, I think you were talking about that too in terms of like you're saying the intangibles being like 1 to 5% was kind of your number with it, versus like as you were mentioning, Mossiee, like you're saying, well, maybe the intangibles are a bigger part of it, and I think for me personally, I've been climbing. My highest rank was as a support player before I transitioned to jungle, and I just got bored with support. I like playing the macro, so I moved to jungle, and I would say I was a low plat jungler for a while, like a couple of seasons even, because it's, as Taysak saying, it's the individual stuff. It's playing opposite quadrant. It's knowing your timers. It's knowing second rotation timers. It's tracking enemy jungle. It's, being on objective timers on time or the right time, getting better understanding of lane control. Like I knew how to play bot lanes, but like I didn't know, my top and mid, what the matchup is and how it's going to relate to a slow push, or can they crash it? Do they have prio? Can they roam? Do we win 2v2? So maybe those are the intangibles, but honestly, I don't think, granted, if I'm seeing a gold 1 versus a plat 1 jungler, and I've never played with Gregorio to that point, I'd like to face him, that it's like, is he gonna, maybe he has better hands than me when it comes to the 1v1, but ultimately, right, if I'm a better jungler, I'm not going to be taking those 1v1s. It's like, as Taysak saying, you're going to be playing away from it. I'm going to play opposite quadrant. I'm going to play to my strong side. I'm going to play for the 3v3s that I know we win because we have an engaged bot side. Whatever it is that like, I think that's how you improve at the game at the solo queue level. And, when I play with people that are, mid gold or whatever it is, like there's a very different fundamental understanding of the game, whether from jungle or from any role, like Taysak is saying, that like, if you guys are at a different mental level, that's the improvement, like playing together is not going to necessarily get you there. Like you do need to be playing the solo queue experience too. So, I don't know. I'm seeing Taysak nod in there. I don't know if you have other insights to that, but, or, no. Back to you, Mossiee, but yeah.
100% agree. 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, for me, from my perspective, I think I have kind of an interesting one on this because I think my team has run into some trouble in the past with me being at the helm and me being like the shot caller that I am, because that's my personality. Like I just want to call everything in game. For the first 2 splits that we played, I literally was micromanaging everyone for every second of the game. And the only reason I was actually able to do that was because of the map awareness knowledge that I had from Dota. That's like the only thing that translated over. And so like, that's the thing where it's kind of hard. Like you don't really notice that as much in a player, but like you can see it over time. Like they're in the right place at the right time and stuff like that. But for my team, for example, like people call this very coin flippy. And I think it's because, at that base level, like the game knowledge is really, really important because I would be making calls and, in general, we would be where we needed to be at the right times. But like sometimes like you just can't take fights. And like, I think my team was very, very well known last bid for just like contesting every single Drake, like no matter what. And it's like it's like a very linear, way to think about it. But like, there's certain things that you do miss out on, you know, as a player, if you're, if you haven't been playing the game so long, it's like, well, there's certain spikes that we might want to wait for. I think it can be very hard as a jungle player sometimes, like, to completely grasp like when you have agency and when you don't, especially when you're playing on these meta champs like the Xin and like the Jarvan, because you kind of have to go in for your team. And so the communication aspect there is really, really important. Like I said, like I tend to make all the calls for my team, and I tend to be like very how would you put it? Like I don't want people to argue with me. And so it leads me into a lot of situations where I'll be like, okay, like no, like we have to be here right now. And then, my player like will want to tell me like, oh, but like, I really need like another item. So it's finding that balance, I think, as a jungle player in particular is really, really hard. And Llama, are you like the main shot caller for your team?
I think it's interesting. I think like on my team, early game for sure, early mid game, it's because I can call, and I'm not. And I think it's very different for me, Mossiee, though, on my team, where I don't say, "Hey, I need you guys here. This herald is spawning in a minute. We need to be here." It's more like, "Hey, I see you guys are crashing a wave. Support. Do you have a roam topside right now? And if he does, great. Let's set it up. Let's play for it." Or it's like, no, like, hey, really gotta stay for next wave, or my carry will say, I'm 50 gold to spike, whatever it is, I need one more wave. And so it's a dialogue the whole time.
Yeah, totally.
And as a shot caller, I think typically, it's as our team. I mean, we've also been playing from ahead. The 4 games we played and the 5 we did in our lock-in.
That helps a lot.
It helps. Shot calling from behind is way different than shot calling from ahead. Shot calling from ahead is just saying like, whoa, what's this guy doing? Hey, can we chase this? Like it's always trying to like push tempo and play ahead. And that's the kind of comms we're getting is like, yo, I think I got to pick teams around. Okay, let's get reset. You're just building strategically there versus behind. It's like, where can we be creative and stuff? I think my shot calling on my team really comes from the collaboration and it's always suggestions. It's always to say, hey, can you move down after top crashes? Or it's like, no, I have a buy or whatever. And, it's those pieces that I don't want to and can't micro for 4 other players. They need to know their item spikes. They need to communicate when they need to back, when they can roam for it, when they're getting pushed in and need a hover, whatever it is. And then I need to communicate my information. And then I think that's how we build kind of that shot calling. Granted, I liked when I could play a tank and just say, all right, I'm playing Zac and I'm going to max range slingshot under the carry and we'll win a fight that way. So.
Yeah, it is interesting how there's those different communication styles. I will say for my team, it's improved a lot as we've all gotten better, because now I can actually ask Okami, hey, can you roam right now? Or like he'll be asking me now. That's the coolest part, is like seeing the development of your players is really, really cool. And facilitating that communication was like the hardest part for me, because we had to go from that system where I was basically making every single decision to getting people to talk more. And I find that that's kind of one of the hardest things in comp. If you have players that are brand new to comp, which I think my team this season we have 2, we have Peanut and Greg, or Lights Genesis in the bot lane. And so like finding the communication balance has been really hard. Taysak, I wanted to ask you, I'm not sure if this is really your wheelhouse, if you deal with the communication, but do you have any thoughts on, the core things to focus on as a coach, or basically just to facilitate like that better communication style and like get your team more coordinated?
All right, buckle in. I got an essay coming. I think communication comes in part with recognition. You know what's happening, you can say what's happening, right? Forehead, obviously. Like you were touching on your point, I think shot calling is an outdated term. I think it's used for a gap in player skill, player retention. If I go into a gold game, of course I can like tell them how to do everything, but what good is that? And on top of that, I'm gonna get overwhelmed. I think this goes into like player development. This is generally how we're doing things at Zeal. We limit the amount of champions they play. We'll say 3 champions. We learn everything about those champions, so that variable is consistent. We know what matchups we win. We know when we win. We know what items we need to go. Good, that variable's done. Now we go into learning concepts. So we're working on bot lane. We're working on our waves. We've played 30 games of Jinx Thresh. Cool, we understand Jinx Thresh. Now, how do we 3-wave crash on Jinx Thresh, right? How do we position on the wave level 1? How do we do this? How do we do that? What happens on the wave bounce? A lot of this is individual coaching, individual work. And then once we've got this concept, now my bot lane understands what a 3-wave crash is. Now, even if they're the most mute, quiet people known to man, they know what a 3-wave crash is. They know what happens on the bounce, and they know what they need to do on the bounce. Now they can call my jungler over, and we can play from there, right? That's basically how we do things at Zeal, concept by concept. And then communication is just concept recognition and then understanding what we can do. And that just comes with taking your licks. You know, maybe the first few times they don't call their jungler over. We talk in bot. I say, hey, this guy can walk over and you can just win the game here. And eventually, repetition, we get it. And then boom.
Yeah, and the recognition is huge, like you're saying, you know, like that's 100% make or break games. Like if you're not recognizing what your lane is doing, what your matchup's doing, when those spikes are, like you have no shot, you know, like if you're not able to recognize, oh wait, this is going to crash in 2 waves. Like you can't be thinking 5 seconds ahead. As you get better, it has to be a minute ahead. It has to be, hey, we're 2:30 till our next dragon. How is top manipulating the next 4 waves, you know, on those 40-second spawns before the dragon objective to be able to be there for it or whatever it is, you know, like you have to be like the recognition also has to be forward thinking far enough that, yeah, you need to know, okay, this is going to crash in 2 waves. Mid, try to have it come into you so support can roam on it or whatever it is. Like you can't be communicating that in game. It has to be, hey, I'm top in 2 waves or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, there's implied stuff with calls. Like if we say we're playing bot, it implies you need to be careful about the counterplay top, and that implies what you need to do with your wave like that. In those plays on bot side, just for example, it's really hard as a shot caller to communicate what needs to be happening top. There needs to be a baseline understanding there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one more interesting thing to touch on with communication, I had kind of a tricky time as a captain navigating the first game jitters thing because it's been so long since I was like a newbie to comp. And like honestly, all my players just haven't been playing comp for that long. So it was one of those situations where you like got in game and we've been scrimming like a whole ton. Like we've played so many scrim games and like everyone knew what to do. But then like we get into this one official and like people were just like talking way too much, like giving unnecessary details. Like I guess my question to you is to both of you guys, it's like from a captain perspective, what do you guys think is most important, like in terms of handling those situations and in terms of like getting everyone to like chill out? You know, I kind of have my own like Dota 2 inspired way of, you know, being a little, I wouldn't call it toxic, but I'm a little like, all right guys, like chill the fuck out, you know, like let's calm down, like it's not that big of a, you know. And part of that is my own experience where I've been playing in, you know, tournaments that are far more significant, you know, in my lifetime. So it's like playing this stuff doesn't really matter. But yeah, like as a captain and as a coach, I guess as well, there's probably something interesting to talk about there in regards to, you know, this is a level of comp where a lot of people haven't really played comp before. Like this is like maybe their first season or maybe their second season, and like it's exciting to play. You know, it's fun and like you're getting casted, but it does it can and does make people very nervous and they get that performance anxiety. So is there a way to better prepare your players to kind of handle that type of environment?
Llama, would you like to go first?
I mean, I'll be curious too if you have some tips. I'm sure you do, Taysak, as well, when it comes to, right? Because you can't be sitting in the call and being like, all right, here's what's next. All right, hey, top, you need to shut the fuck up. You know, like you don't get to go to that.
I mean, it's like I've literally done that
before.
Sure.
So. Hey, stop talking. You know, well, I mean, I think at least as like being in the game as well, you know, like I think we've definitely kind of figured it out. I mean, the first game I ever played, this is a funny story too, with HHZ, when I was during tryouts, I'm someone that always is talking. I'm a communicator. I'm an extrovert. I like talking game state, whatever. And as we were kind of getting to, you know, figure out the team, our top laner, Bennett, like wasn't communicating. And you know, he's not as extroverted and always talking about stuff, whatever. But so I was trying to like figure out the team and I was playing and I was talking, whatever it was. And then there was one play like where top, so I was like, okay, we just won top, keep splitting bot. And I haven't heard from Bennett in like 15 minutes. And he's like, don't tell me what to do. And then like, we just like go and, like, you know, and, like, I didn't mean to be microing him, you know, every detail. I was like, all right, appreciate the comms. Let's take Baron now, whatever it is, you know? And he's also kind of a guy that like, you know, if he loses lane, he'll joke and be like, all right, FF, go next. Or, you know, we'll be up 10-2 and he'll be like FF and throw out a surrender vote. And like that's not definitely my mental with it. And so there is that like, you know, they're like, classic Bennett, because they've been playing together for a long time and I came in as the newbie. So I definitely over communicate, I think, more than under. And I think there's also like understanding the team synergy that like, I know Bennett's not actually totally mental boom when he's like, all right, FF, go next, you know, when he loses a cannon minion or whatever, you know, like stupid shit like that. So, you know, I mean, there's the positive mental side of it. And there's also the like, you know, I think just trying to like Yeah, just always look at the next play. I don't think we're really good at not analyzing plays, good or bad, in game. You know,
Oh, we're awful with that, bro.
yeah, I think it's a huge thing to be like, all right, that didn't go well. All right, hey, Top, you need to come down 2 minutes or whatever. Like, we don't talk about that. You know, it's like, okay, hey, we might have needed TP there. He's like, okay, yeah, my bad. Or like, I couldn't have made it. And you're like, all right, cool, next play. What's next?
Yeah,
So
you need to cut it off at that, right?
yeah,
Like, it
you
needs
need
to
the
be like
forward
the my
thinking.
bad. I have to tell my players so many times, like, I'm like, all right, post game, like we're gonna talk about it in the post. Like we don't need
Yeah.
to talk about it now.
But,
Like,
but
get out of that
it still
thing.
sits on your
Next
mental,
play.
like whatever
and
it is,
everyone's
like
thinking about it. That's the
100%.
problem because
And
it'll
you're
be
like,
2
you
minutes.
fucking idiot! What are you? Yeah.
Yeah, like in game one, we had this one play, or we had like 2 plays at Drake that were just like awful. Like I don't know, like first game jitters. It was what it was. Like it was nothing we would do in scrims, and it's like trying to get us off of like I think the first 2 actually at Drake we handled it more or less well. Like I think in terms of taking fights, like people know how to like readjust, you know, and say okay, like this is what we need to do next time. That's fine. But like with macro stuff, especially, I think that's where you get into arguments as elo because people are in this elo for different reasons, right? So they have different understandings of like how they want to play the map, what they think is good, and you have to kind of consolidate that in a team. You know, like you have to come to an understanding and like set expectations and say this is how we're gonna play. Because for example, yesterday, like I'm sharing so much, like I shouldn't be talking about all this, but it's fine. My support play, like we took Baron and like we didn't really do a lot with it. Our recall times were kind of staggered and like he kind of just like mental boomed I mean he didn't like walk it down a lane, but it looked a little suspicious, you know, like it wasn't great. So like I think handling some of that, like that makes you, if you're able to kind of get to know your players on like an individual level and like know what your players need when they're in those situations to kind of like detail or you know just to avoid escalating a situation. I think getting to that point as a captain is like one of the most important things. Like we have all these unspoken rules where we've set expectations, and now it's like now we know how to handle that in game.
But do you also have a coach, or are you self-coached?
We have 2 coaches.
Okay,
We have 2 coaches.
and AGG is 0. It's literally the 5 of us. So
yeah, so you have to resolve things on your own.
Yeah, which I think is pros and cons. But like, you don't get someone to bring down the hammer. I'm sure, like you know, and I'm sure Taylor, right? Sometimes you get to say hey, you're right, you're wrong. You know, like you know, whatever that is. So I'd be curious with Taysak is there if you've kind of like as a coach, right? Like, does that change like when it comes to resolving?
Yeah. Being the final voice and a mediator is something that comes with the job. We had the unique experience of not picking up any people who have played together before, so we got to set the groundwork, set the environment, and most importantly, set expectations. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, tell us now, and if you don't like it, we're probably gonna know in a few days, right? Because
it'll come through.
All of our players are playing 25 games a week of solo queue, and we have 3 days of scrims. So we are working really hard.
You guys are grinders. Ooh.
Yeah, no, my top laner yesterday was like, dude, how do I tell my girlfriend I don't want to play League with her? I just want to play top. I was like, I hope you don't get broken up with, but I'm proud of you. Good job.
Send her bot with a rando, you know?
Exactly. Make her play Yumi top with you or something. As long as you're playing your role,
right.
I don't care. But you definitely need to have like some form of mediation. Like we do in-houses, and I have 20 players in the same call with me. 16-year-olds just doing random Zoomer things, you know?
Yep.
Code words are what I do. It sounds a little cheesy, but I say clear comms, and everyone knows like that's serious time. Like I like to have a little bit of fun while we're drafting, you know, for scrims and stuff. But when we're loading in a game, I say clear comms. Let's start our pregame analysis, talking, and then everyone just gets it. So something like that is what I'd recommend.
Yeah, code words I think actually are really fantastic. We actually just put a really funny one in place. There's a little bit of lore here involving a microwave that was like used for like 40 minutes on repeat, and like I guess our coach's mom, she like blew up his microwave, and for whatever reason we coined that cowboy behavior. I couldn't explain it, but you know, it's like you're just a cowboy, like you're just, you know, you're like going with the wind. So we have this call out now where like we just say like if there's a situation in game, especially it's like my problem because I get very bullheaded and I just like want to do what I want to do. If someone has like a massive disagreement with something that like only that like the other person wants to do, if they think it's really really bad, like they just say like cowboy, and like usually it's me, like I just have to listen to whatever like my team is saying, right? Like there was an example in a scrim the other day where I was in Zao and I was like, bro, I can solo this Baron, and like I was soloing Baron for like 3 minutes, bro, but it was like sick. Like it was one of those plays where it's like they didn't know I was doing it, right? And like my team was so mad at me after the game. They're like, bro, like I could have come help. It was like our recall timers were staggered, so it was an awkward situation. But like we had to come up with this like form of like code word, right? Like this stupid whatever it is word just to establish some kind of like, okay, like you need to get off, like stop that now, you know? So I think stuff like that is key. And also like for us, it was really important for me and for my players' mentals. I think that I chose kind of like I'm trying to move towards communication that is less like rough and less like 17-year-old gamer boy like get the fuck out type thing, you know, because different people respond differently to to different types of communication, right? And so like I found with my players, for example, that they respond a little less well to some of the stuff that works for me in the past, you know. So I think part of being a good captain and being a good coach too is knowing your players and kind of adapting to their needs. One thing about player mediation I kind of want to ask about is that like how do you handle like obviously what is your approach with player mediation in terms of like do you have to treat everyone the same or like do you know your players, like do you treat people a little bit differently, like what do you think is fair, I guess, you know?
This comes with time. You try to have a general baseline approach. I'm a very silly person. My general approach is very serious. As I start to like form a connection with people, some of the silly shines through, and then I kind of gauge. Because I record all my coaching sessions, by the way.
Gotcha.
I'll link the YouTube after chat.
Nice. Yeah, you'll be able to plug it.
Yeah. And then I just kind of gauge what's cool, what didn't they not like, you know, what can I get away with, what's appropriate, you know. It's hard for gamers, especially social awareness, but we're all trying, right?
That's interesting. And I find on our team, at least, it's sort of like, you know each player's strengths and weaknesses. You know who would like when someone makes a call, like you on our team, we kind of know if it's if it's like, okay, well, let's listen to this call or let's take this call with a grain of salt, you know, and also for different parts of the game, you know, it's like, you know, like I know, for example, in our team, our AD carry, HHZ Big Boy B, right now, he's actually been really helping me when it comes to ending the game calls, because like I'm very like aggressive when it comes to games, and I'm like, I always want to take fights. I always think we win every 2v2 and 3v3, even if we don't, because I want to fight. But when it comes to ending the game, I'm always like, okay, let's take inhib and then let's go get Baron, or let's go reset for soul, or whatever it is. And he's like, no, we end here. And at first I'm like, do we? And then he's right 8 out of 10 times. And so it's like,
yeah, he's usually right.
Yeah. And so like, I know when he makes that call that you're like, okay, like this is the kind of player that I know is right here, you know, and granted, if 4 people say, no, we don't, then like, we won't go for it. But like,
of course, yeah,
you know, it becomes like, it's that awareness, or like when, you know, there's sometimes when Dragon Mooncake will like look for an engage and it's like, nope, that's super it. You're dying by yourself 1v5 right now, buddy. And we'll leave him. But if he's like, hey, I have a pick here, it's also because he sees where his team is at, and we know that like we can follow on those. So I feel like that's almost like I don't treat my players the same. Like even on my own team, like I know when comms like from a player, like, no, this is something we're doing, versus like this is a suggestion, and like, what are your thoughts, I guess, too. I don't know if that kind of alludes to that too, but it's like, it's not on the same level, I don't think, for every player either, for their same strengths or weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I think that's like one of the hardest things, like I said, to kind of balance, you know, being a captain, knowing your players, and then, you know, just learning how to work with everyone. So like my player, my mid laner, my friend Okami Hayazo, like the coin flippiest mid laner, the most exciting player to watch by far and away. Like if eventually we will get our games streamed. I mean, we're streaming them ourselves right now because Flay's, you know, Mickey Mouse League and all that. You guys are like gonna watch Okami, and like there are certain plays like I can't even explain like what's going on in his head. Like it's like I've watched him play so much, like we played so much solo queue and duo queue together, but it's like sometimes like he's just gonna go in on Kaisa and he's just gonna ult in like 4 people and he's just gonna kill 1 person and die. And it's like stamping out those bad habits has been like one of the hardest thing for us over like the past few seasons of coordinated play. It's like all these things that you can do in solo queue, it's, you know, it doesn't always it rarely translates over actually. And I think from a shot calling perspective, it's really, really interesting in these games, because I think you have 2 levels, or like you have 2, you know, basically fundamentally different play styles. I think in the CCS you have teams that try to play like as controlled and as risk-free as possible, kind of like an LCK style, if you will. And then you have the teams that are very like, let's win more, let's play aggressive, like let's go for this play. My team, for example, I think we flipped. Well, we're trying to. We used to be like the very like coin flippy, like let's just go in and let's win more every time. But we found over time that like we get burned so much less in this league for not making the aggressive play. We have lost games. We have flipped, thrown games so many times due to making the aggressive play. And I think there's an interesting conversation to be had there. At this level of play, is it just better to play controlled and force your opponent to make the mistake? Because unforced errors like literally happen so often. And then like the forced errors, like if you can do that, then like how do teams beat you? Because I feel like mistakes will just always happen at this elo.
This is the best question because I literally did this exercise yesterday. I'm dropping a little coaching nugget on everybody, so pay attention, chat. It's even tied to jungle, so it's literally perfect.
Nice.
Awesome. After I talk about so the big things about jungle for me are adaptability, flexibility, and awareness. And I forgot what the last one is. Watching lanes when you're doing your camps.
Right.
And we talked about this with my jungler. My junglers say, "Oh, well, how can I recognize bad lane states and stuff like this?" I put a box around the mini map. I have my jungler. I pick a random game. It could be a game from CCS. It could be a game from solo queue. We even watch like some D1 games from me. We just watch a lane. So we watch mid lane, and I said, "Okay, tell me every time this guy's gankable." And we're watching this guy fuck his wave up, so he has to hit under tower. We're watching him take a bad trade. Yeah. We're just watching only mid, and we're saying, okay, we just watched 10 minutes of laning. This guy fucked up like 30 times. you just have to be here like twice.
Right.
And the game's over.
You have to take advantage.
Exactly. Everyone fucks up. You just have to. I don't know if I can curse. Sorry. Everyone messes up. You're good. You just need to be there. That is your job.
Right. I think there's, I, for example, as a jungler in this league, have a really, really hard time balancing between, like in solo queue, I would almost just, like, full clear every single time, and then, like, the ganks will just happen for me. I feel like I have so many early games that I just grief, because in scrims or in officials or whatever, like, I see something, and I'm like, I can get an advantage here, and then, like, I go for it, and it's just, like, too over-aggressive, So I think there's definitely, like, two sides of that coin, where it's, like, you need to know your game plan still, and, like, sometimes it's okay to deviate, and sometimes it's, like, okay, like it's 5 minutes, like you have only taken like 5 camps, like what's going on, It's very easy in this level of play to get caught up with what's happening on the map, because like people just brawl, man. Like look at our top laners, like in the CCS, like people are just dead on repeat. Like if you look at a CCS game and you count the amount of times that the top laners are dead, bro, it's like basically the entire stream, almost always. When do you like listen to your player? What is the situation? Like I had a game last season. It was our last game of the season potentially, and I was just like, you know what, bro, just give me jungle set. And it's like it was awful, bro. Like it's hard to like. When do you want to go for like comfort? And like I guess from a coaching perspective, like if you're in draft, and part of that is drafting style, like I think us as a team, we've gotten to the point where James just drafts and like literally everyone is muted, and if anyone talks, we're just like, shut up. Like you're griefing the draft, bro. Like because like you can outdraft most teams just by having someone who knows what they're doing. Where's the line fall for you guys at Zeal between champion / player comfortability and meta? Like where do you kind of make that distinction? I know we touched on it a tiny bit earlier.
No, it's totally okay. As long as it doesn't grief my lobby, is how I feel. Yesterday we were working on actually breaking bot brick, translating kill leads into something substantial like dragons, neutral, stuff like that. That does not really revolve around my mid laner.
Right.
Like I have all the bot champs I want. I'm playing like Caitlyn Thresh with J4. So we have the bot accessibility. My mid laner is like R5. I want a Nivea in this lobby. I think a Nivea is really good. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea, but it's not stopping us from what we're practicing right now. So if you want to be a little silly, I'll let you be a little silly. If we're playing on mid jungle 2v2 and he says, I want to pick a Nivea, I'm going to out veto that, definitely.
Yeah, you're going to say no way. I got you.
But I don't want to attribute my players to dogs, but you need to throw this little puppy a bone sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think too, you have to understand how champions work together. If you're saying no, like this is a great Nivea matchup for me, which like I'm not I don't know what it is, but to say like you have to say this is a winning matchup for me, I will win this matchup, and they have to be right, part of it. And also like I picked J4 where we pick triple scaling in lanes, and it's like okay, now I'm J4 with triple scaling. I have nowhere to gank. We don't have gank set up.
Yep.
We're playing
I've been
Enchanter
there.
Jinx, right? And it's like, so did I grief it, or did one of my laners grief it? You know, so like you also have to figure out like, okay, this is what we're drafting. What's going to work here? What's not going to work here? Or am I just going to power farm the jungler as a J4? And it's like, okay, so I definitely grief that. I shouldn't be power farming as J4. You know,
So I think that the drafting is really, really interesting in CCS. We always have an ongoing discussion about like, is it better to drill one style of draft, one style of play, or is it better to like try to be adaptable? And personally, I think after a few seasons, what I've landed on is like being adaptable is like a really, really funny joke. But like there are teams, even in pro play, that do one thing. Like look at Gen G, they do one thing. They play the same way like every single game for like for like 2 years, and like they make it work, right? Like they're just really good at doing that one thing. So I think from a coaching perspective and also from another captain's perspective, it'd be interesting to hear about what do you guys think is best. Where do you find the middle ground on, just playing your style of play, and like my players, for example, are always asking, they're like, oh, like this new champ came out, like should I play it? And like, what do you do in that situation, basically?
Llama, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I can start with that. I did want to name too. I think like Dragon Mooncake's definitely the captain. I get to come in as the jungle and kind of make some pieces with that.
Right.
But I think in our world at least, and I was talking to Orion about it. So shout out to Orion if he's watching. We were talking about it on the podcast previously. He said, so like is Hard Hat Zone going to keep playing the similar comp? Or are you guys going to play the scaling long range Jinx Aphelios that's really common and competitive? And like, we'll go into scrims and we'll pick single target lockdown and we stomp, and it's like, great, we win this style. Like we are good at this style. We can play it. We know what our objectives are. We know where our strong points are. We know how to win this style. I think our flexibility and adaptability comes in with when we can get other picks in, like, okay, how do we play front to back team fights? How do we, and I was picking like a scaling Gwen champ that time. And when I try to like dive backline still, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting destroyed. I'm playing this wrong because this isn't how our team is used to playing. So, I mean, that's where our adaptability comes in, but we can play the same style with 6 different champions, Our support
There's
really...
so many different.
Yeah, and you're seeing that same thing in the jungle meta right now. We're seeing Volibear and Udyr coming back, which have very similar kind of identities in a way, I think in different ways to something like J4 is in, where it's like, Volibear is the early game single target lockdown. It has dive potential mid game. It can really lock down a target, whatever. Udyr's like same. You got your bear slap, you can run in. You have some wave clear, you can match jungle. It's like champs can have similar identities, but do things differently. And that's where the adaptability comes in. And I don't think a team needs to be able to play 5 styles. I think they need to be able to play 5 champions in the same style and say, this is how we're going to keep playing, or be able to shut down things. We like banning Vigar because I'm like, oh, they play Vigar. We don't want to deal with it. Like that kind of shuts down some of our identity too. So I'd be curious how you coach it too.
No, I entirely agree. I think if your identity as a team is bannable in the first phase, you're doing something wrong. Like you said, if you can ban Vigar and then you can't play the game, I think you're doing something wrong. I think there's so many concepts within one way of like playing the game. Like say we're playing the bot side, we can talk about isolation in bot side. How do we play our waves? How do we use our waves? What do we do post wave? We can talk about mid 2v2. How do we swing pressure and then impact our bot lane, break them out? How do we transition our lead bot? There are a million different factors, like all these micro concepts that we can cover within the style of playing for bot lane. As long as my top laner doesn't get bored, obviously. I don't really think it has I don't really see a problem in only playing one style, especially for the teams that are here to just win.
Yep. Yeah.
I think forehead is so easy to play like your Yasuo Diana Malphite and just click your buttons.
Yeah.
EGO, Puff Zone on the Malphite. Shout out last night.
Yeah. Yeah. And if that's the combo that wins and you can just lock down and your teams don't have an answer to it, like that's part of it too. It's like, okay, so now the adaptability becomes in, oh shit, we keep losing to this, or we keep, like,
yeah,
wait,
how do we approach
yeah,
that?
yeah. How do we approach? Okay, what's our counter to it? And you're being creative that way. But I mean, yeah, if your style's winning till it doesn't,
I think we're just about there on time. It was really, really awesome that we were able to get everyone together and talk about this stuff. I think we had a lot of interesting conversations, and I know it was a little bit all over the place. Maybe next time I'll try and have more of like an organized script that we could go through. But obviously, I'd like to see both of you guys back here, and maybe we can in 2 or 3 weeks we can come back and like maybe get another guest from the league. I'd like to have Puffzone on just because he's a he's a big fan of mine. You know, we have an interesting relationship. Yeah, regardless of all like the trash talk and stuff in the league, I think it's cool when we can actually come together and like talk to people like normal human beings and not call them dogs and like learn from each other. Because obviously everyone has stuff to improve on at this level of play. With all that being said, it was super fun to talk to you guys. Before we go, Taysak, and then I'll get to you, Llama. Do you have any like shout outs, call outs, things that you want to plug before we go?
Oh, I definitely do.
Okay.
So I'm here from the Zeal House. Shout out Zeal. Zeal.gg/coaching development. I know we talk a lot of smack because it's funny, but please hit us up for coaching. If you actually want to improve, that's kind of all we do over here. You can get a testimony from any of our players, any of our staff. We are more than capable of helping you guys out, and that's all we really want to do. We are here to sharpen our skills to the point where we can start charging for them. So you might as well get it while it's free.
Nice. On to you, Llama. Any shout outs, call outs? That can be for other teams in CCS. Like if you want to,
Totally.
Go ahead.
I have no problem coaching another team. If they win, it's even funnier.
Especially if they beat Zeal, there you go. That's whatever. Definitely shout out, Hard Hat Zone and the BBB crew. You can find me on socials, Llama Casts on Twitter. It's Llama on YouTube as well. I do some short, just kind of review my own gameplay as well as different coaching, some casting as well for some play-by-play, kind of the Champions Queue, top of the solo queue ladder stuff as well. You can check me out there. And twitch.tv BBB Llama, you'll find me there sometimes. And check out our games. Hard Out Zone's going to stay number 1 here.
Very nice. Well, just for me, obviously there's at Goldfish Esports on Twitter. That's like the Goldfish Gaming thing. If you want to watch us like flip a ton of games, it'd be very fun to watch. We post the links out to like the streams and stuff there. And then if you want to follow me, I think it's just like Mossiee on Twitter. Like I'll link it in the description or wherever this is posted on. On Twitch as well. It's like the exact same thing. So sometimes I stream my games, sometimes I don't. Right now I haven't because the college internet's like dog. But it is what it is. Thank you guys so much for coming and talking. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. I think that's all we got.
Bye.
Yep. Thanks, guys.